Sure, Ashpreet. I will share the recording of this session and even the previous one. I will share it post this webinar. So, since everyone is able to hear me, I can proceed with the webinar. So, hi everyone. So, a lot of you may have attended last week's
Hi.
webinar where we actually created the entire house exterior from scratch. As you can see, this is the reference which I'd taken and I had recreated it in the previous week's webinar. So in case anyone has missed it, you can always check that out later. So in that particular webinar, we had created this entire exterior from the basic superstructure up to the facade elements, the finishes, etc. And we reached up to the external landscaping as well as the rendering. So, as a result of this, we were only able to briefly touch upon the different types of facade elements that can actually be used here. So, as you can see, in this particular house's case, I have used a number of extrusions and projections, pergolas, louvers, jalis, etc. But this is actually just scratching the surface of what we can truly achieve with exterior facades detailing and how we can do so with Infurnia's tools. So today we'll be actually diving deeper into, in fact, the different types of facades and how they can be created using Infurnia's tools. So not only are we going to address the facade elements used in this house, which we definitely will, but we'll also be using Infurnia to demonstrate how to create some relatively modern exterior design elements as well. So this will be less focusing on the exterior of the house, contrary to what the title said. It'll be more detailed into the regarding the facade elements. So we can do one thing. This will be a relatively brief session since we are focusing on just the different types of facades we can create. So the end of the session will be open to any and all questions that you may have, including what kind of facades you may want to replicate, or if supposing you may have missed last week's webinar on creating the entire house, those questions would be welcome as well. So before I proceed with the demonstration, I will just show some examples of exteriors that we can actually achieve using Infurnia's tools. So we should just go through them one by one. So this is some of the basic elements that can be used on Infurnia to be created as an exterior facade. And this is also reflecting in the exterior facade that I had shown last week as well. So we will be touching upon this. But apart from that, we can, when you proceed further, you can see that we can also create different types of curtain walls in for our walls, etc. And this is especially useful for office buildings. And we have a new feature, a recent feature called modular windows, which I had explained last week as well, which will make it so much easier to achieve. So now curtain walls are so much easier to make using Infurnia's tools. We also have, you can see in this particular render that some projections, etc., are more than possible to be created in Infurnia as well.
John, please share your screen.
Oh, okay. I'll just share my screen. I'm sorry, I'll just share the screen.
Not a problem.
Yes. Yes. So, in fact, the house that I was explaining about, which I had created last week, was in fact this, if everyone's able to see. So, I had created this from scratch using the basic structure, etc. And unfortunately, that time we were only able to briefly touch upon these design elements. So now what we'll actually be doing is going further into detail into not only how we can create these elements itself, but also the other types that we can create as well. So I'll just show once again the facade that we can create. So this you may be familiar with. This is quite similar to the normal exterior of the house. This can be made using Infurnia's tools. Now this is the kind of curtain wall that I was referring to for offices, etc., using the modular windows tools, if everyone's able to see. So this can be now used to very easily make through and through curtain walls on Infurnia. Then we have these kind of projections. So we have these kind of projections like balconies, etc., and some glass railings also. These are also more than possible using Infurnia. And you can also see some curved elements in these buildings, as well as some bay windows, etc. And we can even create custom gates using a mix of Infurnia's provided gate catalog as well as our wall tiling and cutting tools.
Sorry to interrupt, Ken, but can we ask Ply Gallery to mute themselves? Your voice is breaking and very feeble.
All right, I will just. Sure. Am I audible now?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. So apart from this, so these are some of the basic facades that can be created. But apart from that, we also have these pergolas, and you can see that you can actually create these sort of steel channels as well as different types of luvers. These can be created using makeshift columns or even using our wall tiling and cutting tool. Also, you may be wondering if these kinds of facades are possible. Yes, definitely. We even have the option of creating our more sleeker or modern versions of facades just using this tool itself and by using the same principle. So we can even achieve metallic sheets as well with their own sort of perforations. We can create interesting jalis by playing around with the materials and playing around with the thicknesses, etc. So this is a very basic example. I can actually elaborate on that further as we proceed with the webinar. And also we can even achieve a facade like this at a much larger scale. And with the developments that have come up in our wall tiling and cutting tool, this will be so much easier to create now. So how do we go about creating these kind of facades? So how we'll begin is I will be starting from the basics such as the modular windows, how we can use them to create curtain walls. Then we will be using beams and columns to create the pergolas and interesting columns as such. And finally, we'll be elaborating on the wall tiling and cutting tool so that we can explore just how much we can achieve with that. So I'll just open this design. So as you can see here, I've used different types of curtain walls. These can even be taken all the way through, but I've just reduced the height here. So when you select this window, you can see that there are several parts of this window. A lot of you may be familiar with modular units like cabinets, etc. Imagine that for a window. We can customize the casing around it, the frame, sash, the respective materials and dimensions, and we can even dictate the number of divisions that it'll be creating. And not only that, you can see that we can even apply a different kind of glass as well. So it's all dependent on what you'd like to add to your catalog. The sky's the limit actually when it comes to creating modular windows, especially to create curtain walls. So how we do this is we start simply by going to the floor plan. And let's say I'm deleting the slab as of now. So we just open a window. We just open the Windows drop down menu. And instead of using the normal windows that we are accustomed to using, we select the modular window. Similarly, with the regular window, we have parameters such as height, width, thickness, elevation, etc. Now, let's say since this is a curtain wall, we will be making it extra wide. I'll just type in 4,000. And we can, height is in fact 3,000. And the width will be 4,000. And we can even determine the elevation to be starting from the ground level instead of its usual sill level of 800. Once done, we can even select the window type if we want it to be a single casement, if we want it to be a double casement,
No,
or
ma'am.
if we want it
What
to be a
kind?
double.
What kind of window we took?
For this particular window, this
Yeah.
is called the modular window. So we have two types of windows. One is the window model, the one for which you can change window models, and the other one is the modular window. Modular window is basically a window whose individual parts you can edit.
Okay. And this
I'll
time,
just
this time, what is the purpose of this modular one?
We can actually use this to create curtain walls.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll just show. So if I place one here right now, as of now it looks like this. Doesn't really look like a typical curtain wall, right? Even after I have changed the dimensions, etc. But this is where the numerous paths that we can edit comes in. The advantage of a modular window is, unlike a normal window, we'll be able to edit this at different levels. So you can see when I select the modular window tab, you can see overall dimensions that you can select, such as the overall width, the height, etc. And you can even choose to publish this window once you're done creating the changes. So after that, we have other parts like the window casing. So you can see the outermost part of this is called the casing. We can choose to enable it or disable it depending on our choice. If I switch this off, this will go. And you can even determine the thickness, width, and the color as well. This is for both exterior and interior casing sides. So I can just switch off exterior casing here, and that means only this side is gone. In that manner, we can in fact switch off the entire casing, and the same goes with the window frame, which is actually this wooden part. So now we can, let's say we can change this material, or we can either enable it or disable it as well. Let's say I'm keeping it and I change the material to an acrylic texture. And I want to do the same with my innermost frame as well, which is called the window sash. You can always change the thickness and the width of this particular frame. Like if I type in 50, you can see the changes happening accordingly. And the same applies with width as well. So I'll just reduce this. So it all depends on the design that you want. And lastly, the most important aspect of creating a curtain wall using this is called the window pane. Now, window pane is the central part of this window. So we can enable or disable the glass, but we want the glass to be there. So we'll enable the pane. We can choose the pane material, which means if I select this and choose a black glass, you can even create a black tint to this as well. And lastly, we have the mullion properties. Now, this will actually determine whether or not you will be able to divide this into several rows and columns. So you can determine the number of rows here. As of now, it's 2 rows and 2 columns. So let's say I just want around 5 columns. You can just type in 5 here. And similarly, for the number of rows, you can keep it at any number that you want. You can change this at any time. You just have to select on the correct tab that is corresponding to this. So in this manner, you can actually create a number of rows and columns for your curtain wall. And this is completely independent of the height to which you are placing this. So even if I'm creating a very high wall, like typical offices would have, you can similarly expand this. You can make this height 6,000 as well. And in this way, you can in fact customize your design. Another thing you can do is, if you want to add a different number of mullions and rows to a different set of window, for example, if you see in this particular slide, here there are two segments. One is a row of taller units, taller glass units, and above that is a set of shorter units. So to add the shorter units, since you cannot add it to the same window, you can in fact do so by creating a different one. How do I do this? I simply once again add another modular window here. In floor plan, I select modular window, and this time I will change its elevation. Instead of 0, I will type in 3000, and this overall height dimension, I can determine it to be something like 1 meter high. So now in 3D, if you look, you can do the exact same thing that I did with this window below it. You can switch off the casings, the frames, you can retain whatever you like. And you can even switch it off completely if you want. Same with sash. And finally, to match the one below, you can close this carousel and select in this three dot button window pane. Once again, since the below one has 8, you can also put an 8 here. And you can number of rows. If you want to delete all the rows, you can just type in 1. That means overall there will be only 1. So this is how you can in fact create a sort of composite window of different thicknesses, etc., using modular windows. And this will actually enable you to play around with your curtain wall design. So now we'd be getting something like this. And individually, you can adjust their heights, etc., to achieve the kind of curtain wall that you want. I'll just make this overall height, let's say 500. And now this is one sort of facade that we can create. So this may be a bit too much to take in. So feel free to note down any questions that you might have so that we can always address them at the end. So this is how we can actually create curtain walls. Now you may be wondering how I've created this kind of window as well. So this actually has to be done during the adding of the window. So in floor plan, as I was mentioning before, if you select modular window, you cannot change the window type later on. So you'll have to decide it. You have to decide it now itself while you're placing it. And in 3D, you can see that this is a double hung window, which means it has been divided into two sides. But this is more for a design purpose. Functionally, it should be because it should be able to open in two ways. But you can even use this kind of design for the sake of the overall look. So another thing we can do apart from curtain walls is we have beams and columns. So you can see that a kind of pergola is created using beams, etc., as well as a peripheral slab. And in the same manner, I've used columns to create a sort of louvered feel. So you may see this in this house as well, that the same like some material has been applied to these beams, and I have created a slab here as well. How we do that is, first, I'll just be extending this floor. I'll just select edit custom shape. So I will actually be starting with the slab first. So we go to architecture and we select slab, and then we just use a rectangle shape to create that slab of our choice. You can use any shape, but for the sake of this design, I'll be using a rectangular one. Now to create that peripheral look, to make the borders, just select offset, ensure you set the mode to copy, and then just type in 100 or any offset distance that you might like. And once you are done, just select apply. Now you can see that the slab is here. You can change its elevation. I'm going to make it 300, and the thickness can be whatever I want it to be. So you can even assign a material to it. You can choose from this drop down menu of already used materials, or you can select from the fetch from store. Now let's say I'm creating these wooden beams to make up the pergola, and I do want to assign it some wooden texture. So what I'll be doing is I go to floor plan and I simply select this drop down menu in home and I select beam. A default beam is already part of your cursor, but to place it, you can just click anywhere on the screen and press escape. And once you're done, you can click on this particular beam and the properties will show up here. You can change its dimensions accordingly. So I'm just going to type in 100. I want it to be 100 wide. This is D for depth, but it actually means the width of this beam. And the length, you don't have to type in the exact one. You can even stretch it and it'll snap to whatever you like. The height also, I shall make 100. That would actually be the depth of this beam. In 3D, if you take a look, it's a bit too low. So the elevation, I'll just make it around 2700. I'll make it 3000 in fact. And I'll assign it a material. I scroll down to the left hand panel and I choose from the materials used already. Once done, I go to floor plan and you actually now have the option of arraying this. How do I do that? I click on architecture, select copy, and I choose from the left hand panel multiply at fixed distance. If I have a center to center distance in mind, I select that. If I have a number of copies in mind, I choose that one. Let's say I want it to be 400 in distance. So I select this and I type in 400. And now I simply click on the base point of this particular beam and I just move my mouse downwards. You can see a preview of beams happening. So once I'm done, I simply click to end this array.
Ma'am, please repeat this one, that pergola. How to put pergola?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. Did you understand about the slab?
Which one?
This black colored peripheral slab or the beams?
No, not appropriately, but still repeat about the beams, that pergola.
Sure. I'll explain about the beams if you understood about the slab.
The
So,
slab is
मैम
my.
स्टार्टिंग से बताइए प्लीज
sorry.
पूरा स्टार्टिंग से बताइए
Sure, I'll just repeat again. So, what I did was I'm creating this black frame. So, that is called, I'm just using that as a slab. So, I'll be going to architecture. I select slab. What I'll be doing is I'll be creating a horizontal frame for my pergola. Now I want to create a rectangular frame. So I select rectangle here. And then I simply click on one point and make another one. Then now if I want to make my frame, I select offset. I ensure that the mode is set to copy because I don't want it to move inwards. I want it to create a copy inwards. If I select move, then it'll just make it smaller. So I set it to copy and then I just click on this frame and then move my mouse. Now, depending on the offset distance I want, let's say I want 100, I'll type in 100 and I'll press enter. Then I select apply to create the change. And here is the slab. But it needs a material. So I select this. I first change its elevation to 3000 above the ground level. Thickness is, I will leave it as 150, and I can change the material as well. I will change this to black because that's what I wanted to match the other one. Now what's left is putting the beams. How do I do that? I go to floor plan, select this drop down menu again, and I select beam. A beam by default looks like this, but you can click anywhere to place it, and you can select this beam. Now I want it to be 100 wide and 100 deep. So in depth, I will type in 100. This is actually the width of the beam. It's just been named as depth. And the height is going to be 100 as well. So I'll just show. So now if I
No,
go to height and I type
I'm
in,
sorry. I had it was a call at phone. For this beam, you took a rectangle only, na?
the beam will be rectangle by default. You cannot change the shape of the beam.
Okay, for beam you took. I have actually it was a call rang on my phone. So little once repeat for this beam.
So I just select this and I click on this drop down menu. You can click on architecture also, and I select beam.
Beam.
So now it's already by default a rectangle.
Okay, that's it. Then it's properties like dimensions and setting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
From
absolutely
three
correct.
from 300 from the ground, same like slab.
So 300 from the ground. So that's elevation. I want to make this 3000. That's how you raise the beam. But if you want to change its depth, I'm going to put 100 in height. That is because I want it to be like 100 deep. And now I want it to be 100 wide as well. So I'll just put it here in depth. So don't worry. So this recording will be saved in any case. You can always refer to it in case of any confusion. And of course, at the end of this meeting, you can pose whatever questions you may have. So we can even resize this beam. You can drag this extent and you can drag it to snap it to the edge of the slab. Now to array it, because I want to make multiple copies of this beam. But first, I'll assign a material to it. So if you could put yourself on mute. Yes. So I will just assign this a wooden material. And
Excuse me, ma'am.
yes,
Instead of copying these beam in the multiple numbers, can we do the division divide? Is there any divide command so that in particular division automatically the beams should be created?
you mean to say number of copies, right? How
Number of
many
copies,
divisions?
number of copies in a equal division
Exactly.
without copying, only division and offsets created, something like
Yes,
that.
yes. So as I was saying, if I go to copy here, if I select copy, we have two options in the left hand panel. There is fixed distance, there is fixed copy. Now, fixed copy is what you might want to determine the number of divisions you want to create. Let's say I'm clicking on fixed copy, and I want 11 copies of this. I type in 11, press enter, and simply click on this base point. And now you can see no matter what distance they are from each other, it's always equal and the number is always 11. So in that manner, when I select, if I click on the point, then these beams are set. So you can see the preview that will help you see the distance as well. And the number is set for you as well. And in the same manner, we can create our columns as well. So when I go to floor plan, now instead of beams, I will be using columns, but I will be applying the same principle to them. I'll just go with profile columns. And similar to beam, this default column is already placed with you. I just place it anywhere here. Now how we deal with this is a bit different. I click on this column and you cannot really edit the dimensions here. You can edit the profile. So I select edit profile And in edit mode, once you're here, you just select all of this by doing a window select and then select scale here. Then once I do that, I click on one point and then I click on the other point. So now you can see when I'm moving my mouse, it is moving in any different direction and the length is also determined. So whoever is accidentally on volume, I'd request them to please put themselves on mute. It seems that my voice is echoing. Yes. So let's say I want this column also to be 100. So I type in 100. I'm scaling it equally. So I just type in 100. So that means now all the sides of this column are 100. Then I press apply. And now you can see this ready-made column is here. And in 3D, you can even see that this column has been placed as such. All I have to do now is change the height. So that will meet the beam. I'll make the height 3000. And I can change the material here as well. I will select bark burn. And now the same manner in which I did with the beam, I can array this column as well. So I just go to copy once again, architecture, copy, and I click on fixed copy. It's at 11. Determine this base point by selecting it. And then I click on the final destination point. Now that these columns have been placed here, I can go to 3D and you can see here that these columns have been placed and with much greater ease than would have been possible a few months ago. Now, one another thing that needs to be added here is you can create some interesting channels using the false ceiling, in fact. So how do we do this? So you can see this is the slab and this is the false ceiling. So the below part is in fact the ceiling and above it, I have attached a false ceiling. So for the 3D sake, it actually looks like a channel. So you can actually use this tool to create this. So to do that, what I'm doing is I go to floor plan once again and I select ceiling. Now I choose a rectangle, or in fact, I don't choose a rectangle. It's easier to choose a line. So I choose a line tool and then I simply trace out the profile that I want. I want this to be 100 wide. I type in 100 wherever I need to. Type in 100 once again. And always ensure that when you're doing this, you are creating a closed shape. How you will know it's a closed shape is when the entire shape is highlighted in blue. That will be a good indicator of whether you're doing this correctly or not. And once you're done, you can select apply. Once you do so in 3D, you just have to tilt your view a little bit to see that particular ceiling because that is how it is designed to work in Infurnia. So once you are done with that, so here you can click on the ceiling. Once again, you can change the material in the same manner in which you change the slab material. The thickness, I'm going to leave it as 2. And the elevation, I will, let's say, leave it at 3000 because I want it to be part of the slab. So now this is the first half of the channel. Now, how do I create a second one? You can put another ceiling like this and you can change the elevation slightly more. But an easier thing to do is use the false ceiling. To do so, I click on this ceiling and in the left-hand panel, I select create false ceiling. Now I select add because I want to add a shape and I simply trace this particular shape. Since I just want a copy of this 150 mm above the original, I select apply, click on this shape, click on this new shape. This thickness, I'll make it 2 as well. I'll keep the type to be extrusion. And because it is basically an extrusion of 2 mm, and I will change the material here. The front shift, since I want this to be 150 above, I will type in minus 150. So usually false ceilings are below the actual ceiling, which is why the positive value will make it drop. So that's why I'm typing a negative value. Once I go back to designing, this channel has been created. And depending on the material that you add, it'll look very much like an actual steel, MS steel channel or whatever material that you might want to add to it. I'll just admit a few more people in. Okay. So this is the this is how we can use slabs, columns, and beams, and even false ceilings and ceilings to create pergola designs or even other similar kind of facade designs. So that's one thing. So now we have explored curtain walls, we have explored modular window tool, and we have explored these tools as well. Now the final and most important tool is the wall tiling and cutting tool. And this is what is actually going to allow us the most flexibility with our designs. Everything you see in this house, such as this protrusion, this white frame, this jali, and in fact, even these louvers I've not created using columns, I've in fact created them using the wall tiling and cutting tool. And not to mention these as well. So you have a huge amount of flexibility and you can create both traditional as well as modern designs alike. So when I go to, I'll just show the basic example of what you can achieve with this. Let's start with basic extrusions, niches, and cuts. You'll notice a few elements here. One is an extrusion. You can see that there's a glass railing here. This has also been created using wall tiling and cutting. Now I've also created some louvers inside, and within that I've cut a big circle. You can see a sort of protruding slab here, similar to what you may be seeing in this. So I just created a miniature version of that here. And a very recent addition is that we can create niches, not only create niches in our walls, but we can color them too. So let's go over them one by one, see how different shapes are created. So to begin, I'll start with this particular shape. To access the wall tiling and cutting tool, you need to click on the wall surface upon which you want to apply this. When you select the wall from floor plan view, you will not be getting the option of wall tiling and cutting because it's not a surface thing. You have to go to 3D and select the surface. And in the left-hand panel, ensure that you're in the Walls section tab and then click on Tiling and Cutting tool. You'll now be presented with the profile of the wall. So to add any shape, just select Add. Select Add and use the line tools to create the shape that you desire. I'm going to create an S shape. Just a simple basic S shape, which we can play around with later. Select Apply. And now we have the properties of this shape. When you select it, you can see in the left hand side, you can see you can edit the shape so that you can make whatever changes you want. You can, when you click on this, you can see you can change the type to extrude. You can make it a tiling or you can even make it a cut or a niche. So for extrude, we just keep it in extrusion and the depth is actually the thickness of this extrusion. I want it to be something like 1000 mm. So I simply type in that amount. The front shift is basically the distance of this protrusion from the wall face. I want it to be attached. I'm keeping it at 0. And lastly, you can change the material as well. I'm going with a traffic white. And now when I go back to designing, you can see that this protrusion has been created. This is 1000 mm, but you can always change this later by selecting on this wall or on this tiling and going back to tiling and cutting tool. Select this once again and go to maybe type in 500 instead. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with this because you use this concept a lot in your wall paneling, etc., for your interior works. But this is highly useful for your exterior facades as well, especially so because you can use it to create glass railings as well. Instead of loading one into your catalog, you can easily do this instead. Let's say I'm creating this glass railing. Again, I click on this wall surface because I'm going to be applying it here. I go to tiling and cutting tool. Now, since the extrusion I'm applying is going to be completely different from this one in terms of the material, the thickness, properties, etc., I need to click on add again. When I click on add, you will still be having the reference image of whatever's coming behind it. So it'll be very easy for you to sketch out what you want. I'm just using the rectangle tool to create the glass railing, and I select apply. Once I do so, if I click on this, I'm keeping it an extrusion. I want it to be 20 thick. That's appropriate for a glass. And from materials, you can actually select from this fetch from store. Click on this drop down menu here, select glass and choose the glass of your choice. You can add more also, but you can select from here as well. Now what happens is, so we have this glass material here. If I go back now, you can see this glass is attached to the wall. That is because I've kept the front shift to be 0. To remedy this, I select this, I go to tiling and cutting. And now depending on where I want this to be, how far from the wall face I want it to be, I can simply type in the value here. I want it to be 500 away, or in fact, I want it to be 480 away because the thickness of the glass is 20 anyway. So I'm typing in 480 so that I want it to be flush with this surface. Once I do so, I go back, and now you can see this has been shifted forwards by that distance. But how to create this particular part of the glass? Once again, go to tiling and cutting tool, select add. Why so? Because this is going to have a different thickness. Instead, I'm going to be creating a cross section here, and I'm going to be selecting apply. Now here what I do is, once again, instead of keeping the depth to be 20, I'm going to make this 480. And then I will apply my glass material here. So it's this profile that is extruded by almost 500 and it is attached to the wall. So I'm keeping it at 0. Now when I go back, I have created the second part of this railing. So these are what can be created using front shift and extrusion and even changing materials of various parts. And in a similar manner, in fact, we have created this particular protrusion. You may have also seen that when I demonstrated the types of tiling, you might have seen something called tiling and you might have seen something called cut. We'll be dwelling on cut today because it can be used to create niches as well as out and out throughout cavities like this one. Let's start with the louvers first. In fact, let's start with these niches. When I click on this wall, let's suppose I want to add different niches here. I go to tiling and cutting tool. I simply create a rectangle or any shape that I want. I can even create a circle here. And I select apply. Now what we do here is I click on this shape and in type, I'll change it to cut instead. And now the depth will mean a different thing here. Instead of how thick the extrusion will be, this will determine how deep the cut is going into the wall. I don't want it to be only 20 deep. I can even change it to something like 50 or 100. Let's say I'm keeping it at 50 for now. And if I go back, you can see that a niche of 50 deep has been created. And if I want to change the internal material, you can do that now. This wasn't the case a month ago. So it's a new feature. Going back to tiling and cutting, you can simply click on this and you can change this to any material that you want. This is particularly useful if you are creating paneling inside, like for internal walls, etc., but can be used here as well. Now, if I go back, you will be seeing this surface that has been applied to the niche. But what about a cut? How can we create a through and through cut? Simply by creating a larger depth for this. So if I take a look at this wall, check out its properties, you can see that this is a 100 mm thick wall. So of course, we simply create a cut using a 100 mm deep one. Going to tiling and cutting tool, selecting add once again. Or even if I took this circle and copied it here, so now it has the same properties. The only difference is that I'm going to keep the depth to be 100 now. So that will be cutting throughout the wall. Now you can see that this has become white in color. This is to depict that it is now a complete cavity has been formed. So now when I go back, you can see that a full cavity has been formed. Using these concepts, you can actually use these particular tools to create something like this, in fact. So to do that, I'll just be using a brand new wall. Let me just change this material to a black color. And then I use tiling and cutting tool. Now what you may have noticed is that I have created a cavity here. I have created some extrusions here, these louvers, and I have even created another circular cut. So now this is a unique situation. We are dealing with 3 different layers of tiling, so to speak. So how do we do that? Let's click on the surface first. Let's click on tiling and cutting tool. And I want to create one louver. I make the usual rectangle to create that particular louver and I select apply, right? So this louver, you can keep the depth, the thickness of this louver to be anything of your liking, and you can create an array. Simply select copy in this toolbar and you can choose fixed distance or fixed copy depending on what setting you want to put in. And I'm just simply going to type in 300 or any fixed distance of my choice. Click on this and once again you can see some preview of louvers happening. It's visible if I move it here, but you get the idea. It is moving in this direction and I can click anywhere to end it. So now this array has been created. And you can even mask select these and you can copy it once so that you can create a more dense collection of louvers. So now you have created something like this. And when you go back to designing, this is what you have created. But now if I want to create a cut behind it, I select add once again. I create a rectangle and I select apply here. I change this to cut and I keep the depth of the cut to be throughout, which is 100. Now it may appear to you that it is actually taking over the louvers and you are not able to edit the louvers here, but it in fact makes no difference to the actual design. So this is just showing on top because you have recently added it and it is purely based on 2D layers, the way you edit them. If you go back, you can see that it is still turning up behind the actual louvers. So the its position in real time is determined by the front shift. Although it looks like the cut is ahead of everything, the front shift is what determines the actual position. This is just how it is going to be visible to you. So if you want to edit the louvers in front, you can go to the left hand panel and we want to shift this back. I select order here and I click on move down. I keep clicking on move down until all the louvers show up. Easiest thing to do is you can create the cut first and then the louvers, then you wouldn't have to do all this. But this is just to show you that these layers don't really mean anything in terms of actual position, just means its visibility in this edit mode. So now that is there, you have created your cut, you have created your louvers. How do I create the circle now? Simple enough. I go back to tiling and cutting tool and I select another shape. I create a circle here. Select apply. Change this to cut. I want the depth of the cut to be 20. And now since the thickness of these louvers are going to be 20, this is actually happening behind the louvers. I wanted to shift in front. If I go back, you can see that it's not coming out the way we want. So we need to shift this forward. We need to shift the back side of this forward and then cut into these louvers. To do that, I click on the circle. I select front shift and put it to 20. I'm keeping it 20 mm ahead. And the depth should be equal to the wall's thickness. Otherwise, you will see a circle behind. This is one of the side effects of being able to color your niche. Means unless you make this through and through depth of the cut, this will not make a difference. So I'll just make it 40 instead. So now you can see that a circle has been cut all the way through these extrusions, these louvers created, thus giving off the impression that I have made a circular cavity in this. And it's very simple to make. Simply need to add a circle and put in the correct settings. So this is actually the basics of doing your tiling and cutting tool, especially for your exterior facades. This was in fact how I created these designs as well as these louvers. They were just shifted in front by a huge distance. So another very important application for these louvers is besides these traditional designs, we can in fact use them to create modern facades. So you might have seen that you can sort of replicate this design in fact. This is just a simple extrusion sheet in which I have made cuts, and in here I have created a number of hexagon extrusions and played along with the front shifts. So I can just briefly touch upon how that's been created. So let's start with this particular sheet. Once again, what I've done is I'll delete the slab. And you can see one cut has been created here and it has been created here as well. I'll just add another sheet here. I'll just go to tiling and cutting. First make my cut. Select apply. Change the cut here. Make it 100 here. And the front shift will be 0 itself because it's going to be cutting into the wall. That is one thing. Now we are adding the extrusion, this sheet. So I simply go to tiling and cutting tool. Create another sheet. This will act as my metal sheet. And I select apply. In fact, even if I edit the shape and I create a circle inside this, like a cavity, then if I apply it, it will be created automatically. And then you can apply whatever depth you want, whatever type you want. You can assign a material to it of your choice. Going back, you'll be getting this. But another thing you can do is Instead of creating these within the shape, you can add them separately as cuts so that you can move around with them whenever you want. So I go to add again. I'm going to create this cut. Very simple cut, going like so. Same way that I did a circle with the louvers, I'll just be creating a cut going through this. And I choose cut here, change the depth to 100, and change the front shift to 20. So now you can see that it's cutting through. Going back, you can see this cut has been made. Now you can play around with this. You can select this cut. You already saw that you could copy this. We can even scale it. You can click on scale here, and you can click on this reference point and play around with the size and select it. You can use this, you can select this, you can click on mirror. So to flip it, you just select move here and determine your, just draw your mirror axis like this, and it'll be flipped over. If you want to mirror it, select copy and then determine your mirror axis, that you'll be creating two copies like this. So now you'll be getting something like this. Another thing I wanted to point out is that if you can see this very thin strip of light here. So if I go to my renders and I just make the sunlight to be something like 5 p.m. and then I run a render preview, you will be able to see that I have actually created a sort of light strip around this, which you can actually activate for your night facades, especially office buildings and such. So to explain briefly how I did that, just to get a better view, I'll open the render preview. Yes. So how do we create this kind of luminous sort of strip happening around your cut? How do we create something like that? So what we do is we need to create another sort of tiling cutting, another sort of tiling extrusion, but this time it will be assigned a sort of a light property. I'll just briefly show how we can do that. I click on this particular surface, use the tiling cutting tool once again, and let's say I want to make a circular strip that is emitting light. I select add, I create a circle once again, and then I use offset here. I select copy and I use it to make a very thin strip. Let's say 10 mm. So now this is the actual shape that's going to be extruded here. I select apply. And now I keep the front shift as 20 and the depth is going to be 10. So this is a normal extrusion. If I go back, this is what I'll be getting. But in render, it will not turn up luminous. So we need to assign that kind of material to it. To do that, I go to tiling cutting tool, select this particular shape, ensure you're selecting the right shape. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be cloning an existing material, like a white color material, such as wall default example, or even traffic white. And I'll be assigning an emissive property to it. Now, when I go back, when I click on this option called clone selected item, I'm going to be cloning this traffic white color. We can name it anything like light 2, etc. The real property you need to look at is scrolling down. You see something called emissivity. Selecting this and going down, let's use 1 to 2, depending on how intense you want the light to be. Let's say I'm typing in something like even 3. This is just for the sake of seeing the light. I click on clone and apply. Now you can see that the material applied to this is light 2. In fact, I can even create a copy of this. And let's say I just want to scale it again. Like an offset. So we'll be creating two lights like this, going back. So now I've created these two light emissive tilings, selecting render and just checking out the render preview to see if the material, the basic material has been applied. You can see that it is emitting some sort of light property. And you can even change the ramp up the intensity to around 10 if you want it to emit a glow. So once again, this uses a very simple concept of extrusion and cutting, but the light and changing of light properties is something new that you can apply. And of course, the same thing goes with this as well. So not only can we create circles and rectangles and other sort of line tools, we can even use this to create hexagons and other such polygon shapes. Once again, I'll be selecting this shape here. And you can create a cut of your choice, that is fine. But let's say I don't want to do that. I just want them to sit on top of this wall. I select add, and we have something called polygon here. I select this in the left hand panel.
Hello, madam. Namaste.
Yes, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you explain about where you are saying some a command like a clone?
Yes, yes. I'll just
Can you show me where exactly the clone command?
yes. So
Thank you.
yes, yes. So you see, it's a very small button actually. Some labeling is in order, but you can see there's something called clone selected item. This is
Okay.
against any material that you might have. Even if you change this to a basic wall default or like even a red cement wall, you'll always have the option to clone this material, cloning the selected item.
Okay. Yes, madam. We understood. Thank you.
Yes. So of course, this is so that you can keep the base color the same while emitting all sorts of other properties to it, including glossiness, roughness, metalness, etc. So yes, back to the hexagonal shapes. So of course, we have the option to create several sided polygons. If I select add, and I will just be creating, selecting polygon here. Same way I clicked on rectangle. And you can determine the number of polygon sides. I want a hexagon. I'm typing in 6. And I simply click on one point and I just type in the radius of my choice. Type in like 500, etc. Or in this case, you would not really be able to do so until you click on it once. And once you do so, you can select apply. So now the shape has been created. This is one such shape. And you can use the array tool. In fact, not the array tool necessarily, but the copy tool or any similar tool to create the sort of pattern that you are seeing in this. These are just numerous hexagons just pasted together. And in the render, you will not be seeing the lines between them. It is just material. So when I go to back to modern facades and I assign a material to this, I'm putting this brick texture. Select copy. Selecting copy, I'm just clicking on base point and clicking on the actual point. You can bulk select this, click on copy again, or you can click on mirror and then use it to mirror this. And then you can select it like this, use the move tool, and then you can create something playful like this. So this is touching the wall, depth of 20. Going back, you'll be able to see this. In render, you'll not be seeing any of these lines, not to worry. And to create, of course, the offset tool is used to create. I'll just zoom into this. To create these sort of shapes, you can simply use the offset tool, but the same principle. Once again, I go to add polygon and I choose this sort of hexagon. Using the offset tool, clicking inside the shape and determining your offset radius, 30 I'll say, selecting apply here. And now if I go back, it's buried inside this. I want it to be sitting on top. Simply put in front shift to be 20 extra. Your thickness can be whatever you want it to be, and assign it a material of your choice, and basically give it the same kind of treatment that you were giving it to this as well. Just copy it everywhere. Just use it, play around with the designs. And of course, when you go back, you will be seeing that you can create something like this. And finally, you can add your cut behind. Use cut, add the thickness of the wall in your depth, and you can go back. And now, in fact, if you want to, you can add some materials to this as well. You can add planters to this. It'll make it look like a very interesting kind of a green wall, in fact. You can go to furnish for this. And we have the plant category herein. When I select that, I'll just refresh this page. If you could just give me a minute, I'll just reopen this. Yes. So you can add whatever plants, shrubs, etc. you like, just to liven up your design, your exterior facade. As of now, it's looking quite a little too sleek and modern. Let's add some life to it. So we add plants. We just select from the plant category. I would suggest going for not these. I'd suggest going for the shrub or these hanging plants. I'll just go for the shrub for now. And you can set it anywhere by clicking here and just maintain aspect ratio. You can check or uncheck this box, but to proportionally scale it, in the left hand panel, you can change its height. You can change one dimension, in fact, and it'll be scaled uniformly. Then you can just drag it wherever you want it to be. And you can copy this as well. You can copy it wherever you like. Just place it here and there. If you have a particular place in mind, you can click on this plant and you can just drag it in floor plan also, play around with its elevation, etc. So you can see in position, right? Y-axis, it says it's 1427 above the ground level. Can even make it 1500. No, can make it, let's say 1700. And in floor plan, just drag it elsewhere. So something of this sort. So this is how you can actually create modern facades like this. Again, using the basic tools but the principle is the same, but just a slight difference is that the flexibility of shapes as well as the sort of light emissive materials that you can create. Now, lastly, we'll just be reaching something more a little bit more interesting, because it's not immediately you won't be able to figure it out on the first glance. So it's called, I'll just show the non-planar facades. You can use the same principle, in fact, to create curved facades as well as jalis. So you might be seeing this. This is a curved shape I've created, and this is the jali of different protrusions. So how I've created this is a little different. So let me just start with the most straightforward one, which is these jalis. I think at this point you might already be knowing how it might be created. So I use the same thing here as well. So I'll just briefly touch upon that. If I click on this and I go to tiling and cutting tool, you can see that each this is an extrusion of 100, this one is 400, and this is 250, and I've just used these and arrayed it in different ways and made a grid that has created this sort of dynamic looking facade. But something a bit trickier is how you can create something like this. So the thing is, if I go to floor plan, you can see that there's a wall sticking out here. There's actually a wall sticking out. The reason this wall is there while it is not there in this 3D is because I've actually used this wall as a reference to create tiling cutting. By that I mean, if I select this wall and I go to tiling cutting tool, this extra bit of wall that was sticking out and that you couldn't see at all in the left hand panel, you couldn't see at all in the 3D view, was actually this wall. And I've used this with an extrusion of 3000 or a very large depth. And I've actually used that to extrude along this side. I will show it in detail. How do we start? So we go to the floor plan first and create any wall of our choice. It does not matter because we are going to be creating a cut through it anyway to make it invisible. So I simply press space bar to align this and I make a wall here. Now this is the wall which I'm going to be using to cut through. Let's say I want a facade here. Now I simply select this and I go to tiling and cutting tool. I'll create a very simple curve. I go to add, and now I'll just use a line tool to create the thickness here. And I will be using simple arcs. I use a 3-point arc. I click on one point and I click on another point and determine the bend. And in the same manner, I can do this with the other side as well. So this is one side. I use the tangent arc. So instead of creating arcs repeatedly, I can simply click on this tangential arc, click on this point, and then you can play around the bend with the bend in this way. So this is how we can actually create a sort of a spline, but made out of geometrical arcs rather than uncalculated curves. So in this manner, I again use tangential arcs to create this. You can use any arc that you like. I'm just using this because gives a very organic look. And finally, to make this a complete closed curve, I just use this line. And now this is actually the profile that's going to be continued along the adjacent wall, making it appear as though it's associated with that wall, when in fact it is not. So I select apply. So now it looks like this. This is how it would look like. Now we need to create a cut through this wall so that it looks like it never existed. I select the surface, click on add, rectangle, select apply, go to cut, say 300, and now you can see this was 100, wasn't it? Or 300. I'll just make this curve again. I'll just delete this wall. Yes, there was some issue with that particular wall, but that means that because of this wall hadn't formed properly. But now if I take a look, and let's say I just made this cut 100, so that you can see that niche is still there. But if I change this cut all the way through and make it the exact depth of this wall, you can see that while this curve remains, this cut is gone. The entire wall has disappeared. All that's remaining to do now is simply assign a material of your choice to this particular curve and extrude it away from this invisible wall. Going to tiling and cutting, I click on order. I move this down so that I can see this particular curve, and I just make the depth to be whatever length I wanted to extrude and put in any material of my choice. I go back, and now you can see that this curve has been created. And it is simply used by creating another wall, which will not be visible in 3D. The only problem is that it will be visible in your floor plan. But that is actually something you can mask in your presentation drawings by using some other methods as well. So largely speaking, especially for the sake of 3Ds, this is quite a useful tool if you want to create curvilinear kind of protrusions in your, which you can't really do by clicking on this surface. So yes, this is, so basically we have briefly touched upon different types of non-planar facades, the jalis, etc., and modern facades as well, of course, whatever you might have seen here. I think you might have better idea of now on how to create them and how to also add different elements to actually liven up your facades. So this is actually just to touch upon the various kinds of facades you can actually achieve. So now this would actually technically bring us to the end of this particular session. So if anyone has any questions right now about how they can achieve a particular type of facade, or even any questions on regarding the previous webinar's house in case they have missed it and want to know something about it. I know we have glossed over a lot. So if anyone has any questions, the floor is open for you all.
Madam,
Yes.
hello, madam.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Can you repeat? the last command what you expressed about this the through the this extrusion of with arcs and all.
Yes. So the curve, right?
Yes, madam. Can you I mean can you repeat so that we can understand?
Yes, yes. So usually what you might have seen with the other types of extrusions are made up till now is that this particular I use this particular surface, and on that I'm literally applying the extrusions, etc. Right?
Yes, madam. Yes, yes.
But what happens is that, let's say in tiling cutting, I go to add and I create any sort of arc like so, and you may have noticed that I'll just create another one right now. This arc, right? And I'm selecting apply and I make this 3000. You might think that this would be continued along the length of this wall, but that is not the case. It will actually look like this. So,
Okay, madam. Okay.
yes. So, what I did instead was I created a wall here, perpendicular to the actual wall, so that I'll be using that as a sort of a placeholder to create this extrusion. So, of course, let me just delete this. It's kind of blocking my way. So, I created this wall here, which you're unable to see right now because going to tiling and cutting, you can see that I have created a cut going all the way through that perpendicular fake wall so that it won't appear in 3D at all. In your renders, in your 3D, nothing. Only the only trace of it will be in your floor plan. And once I've done that, I have created this sort of curved profile and I have made it the extrusion length here so that it will be offsetting from this wall and carrying itself across the other side. So, yes. So, was that concept understood or?
Not yet, madam. Not yet understood. Because you're taken a one wall, but on that wall, you're making one more. I mean, a curvilinear shape. That shape you want to. I mean, you are giving some depth to it
Yes.
to form a kind of a shape or something like that, right?
Yes.
Then after that, we need to make an extrude command, right? Can you step by step, can you repeat once, just like any simple yes or something, not into this,
Okay.
uh, so that we can understand easily.
Yes. I'll repeat the process one by one. Let's take,
Okay.
yes, let's delete this. I'll once again draw this. Here this is the floor plan. So this is the wall I'm creating this, right? I wanted to continue here. Then I'm creating another wall here. This will act as my dummy wall.
Yes.
So I'll be using this. Now I'll be using tiling cutting tool. Now leave the cut. Let's say I'm just creating my S shape. I select add and I simply select. I use my arc tools to create a simple kind of a shape. And if you want, you can use 3 arc again. You can use tangent arc so that you can take offshoot this as a tangent. Then I create my closed curve. This I think is clear. If you are not clear on this part, you can tell me.
We can copy the previous one. Why you are again making one more, I mean, arc, madam? We can copy even though, but with that process also we can go ahead, right?
You can actually just you can select this the way I just did, and you can mirror it along the line, select it to copy, then simply determine the axis like this. So this is one way to do it. Definitely.
So my
And
question is, no, instead of adding one more arc, we can make it offset with the same thing. Is it possible, man? Not possible, I think so. Because when it is offsetted, something the dia, the same thing it is follows. No.
okay, I understand your question.
Okay,
You can't offset open curves. Only once they're closed you can.
okay, madam. Okay, okay. Got it,
Yes.
got it. Thank you, thank you.
Yes, yes. But of course, you can create the rest of the shape, which I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier, but you can definitely do that actually. You can simply delete this, select these instead, and simply move it to this one. This will actually save you a lot of trouble as well. And then use these points to create like this. Now, here is your curve. I'll delete this line. So this part, I guess, was clear. Your closed S was created and you select apply. And now this S is here. I'm going to make this 3000 as depth. So it's extruding by 3000
Yeah,
from
yes,
this
madam.
wall. Yes, yes. Right?
One more on the. I mean, this. I mean, one more box kind of the line of the one more added wall. Peripheral lines also is visible in this view. Is it visible in the render or not yet?
These blue lines,
Yes, madam.
these blue lines are there because I've selected it so that you'll know, so that the user will know with what wall is it associated with. If I press escape, you'll not be able to see it.
Behind this, no, no, not behind this. There is a wall is already there, na, madam.
This one, right?
No, no, no. When we we are already created one line, na, madam. So that line, that wall, extend. I mean, you are saying that some dummy wall kind of something. We are
Yes.
created with a dummy wall with a shape of S. For
Yes.
that shape of the S, we are created one dummy base wall. On the base wall, we extruded, right?
Yes, correct.
Uh, above the yes, there is another extended wall is there. That how to remove that wall?
Above this X, this S, there
No, no,
is
this brown color wall, brown extra
this one.
after no, not that brown. This gray.
This one. This
This
is the one,
extra,
right?
yes, madam, yes, madam.
You okay? Yes. The dummy wall. So I made it visible right now because I just want to show which wall it is extruding. So this is actually the final step. So we simply make a cut through the whole thing. So that will be cut through. So I want to create a cut all the way through so that it doesn't look like it exists. I go to tiling cutting tool, select add, select rectangle, create an entire cut of this form, and I'm making the depth to be equal to the overall depth of the wall, and I change the type to cut here. Now you can see it has turned white, and when I go back you can see it is gone.
Yes, yes. This is a command I can't understand. That is why I was asked again. Anyway, thank you, madam.
Yes, yes, if you are completely clear on this we can
Yes, madam.
anything
Clear,
else?
clear. Nothing. Now I got clear, madam.
All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Apart from this, any other questions? So this was quite a complicated one. So any other questions that someone might have? Anyone has missed out on something? I can explain it again.
Can I ask one more question, madam?
Sure.
Is there any possibility if we did any model in the SketchUp, that model can be imported into this Infurnia?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And even CAD also we can export into this Infurnia, right?
You can export a CAD drawing, yes. Like,
CAD drawing only. Yes, yes.
yes, like a plan. You can do that.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Yes. So, any other questions?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, actually, I want to know when I am doing a rendering, the light reflection is very high. How can I off this?
This is for interior or exterior renders?
Interior.
All right. Um, you wouldn't happen to have a picture of that render with you right now, would you?
Hello?
Yes. So
जी
you're
मैम
saying it's
बताइए.
reflecting on the walls, right?
जी मैम.
Yes. So it's highly possible that the material applied to your walls is very glossy. So, which is why the light is bouncing off of it. Of course, I can't really say because I can't see your image, your render.
Sure
So
मैम.
you hello.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
जी मैम.
So the issue is that you're rendering the lights are reflecting off the walls, is it?
Yes. Yes मैम.
Yes, yes. So that the main reason for that is the walls usually by default they have a glossy material property. So when rendered it'll reflect like that. So I'll just show an example. So let's take this wall for example. And we can actually change the material settings for this wall. So we don't want it to be very shiny because if it is shiny the light will reflect off the walls and the render will look very strange. So to do that I select materials here in the left hand panel, bottom left. I click on the picker tool and then whatever settings I want to change I click on that particular part. So this wall for example I want to change, so I select this. Now, sir, if you can see in this panel, you can see some properties here already. So, specular means glossy. So, you need to reduce that to 0. And your roughness needs to be maximum, it needs to be 1. I think once you apply this to your walls and floors, you should be able to generate better renders.
Okay ma'am. Thank you. Actually ma'am, I want to know how can I add slider gate on wardrobe?
Add a
Slider gate.
slider gate. Okay, like a sliding mechanism, right?
Yes.
Yes, so I'll just put a wardrobe here. So you can either choose the overlay sliding shutters we have already, or we can choose any other kind of wardrobe. And let's say I want this part to be sliding, like this shutter system. I just click on this shutter system here and this shutter system tab, and I go to shutter mechanism here. And I simply change it from double swing to 2-door, 3-door, 4-door, etc. sliding shutter. So I'm just selecting 2-door. So now you'll be able to open and close it. So does that answer your question?
Ma'am, this note looks like a slider.
So the mechanism, etc., like you're talking about channels, etc., right? So this is just to show the fact that this is a sliding mechanism. So in floor plan, I think you'll be able to see that the shutters here are going to be sliding itself.
Okay
You can
ma'am.
even make this throughout. Can delete this drawer system and delete this shutter system as well. So let's say you want an overall one. I just go to this overall partition and add a system here. And right now I am changing the mechanism to, once again, shutter system. I go to two door, or if you want, you can even make it multiple door, like three door, etc. So here you can actually see that these are the panels of the sliding door. So you can see like this. These are the different
Okay, ma'am.
panels. You're able to see the hardware, especially if you're not subscribed to the manufacturing.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Are you clear on that?
Thank you. Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
No issues. Any questions uh, related to the exterior facade or an exterior house?
Ma'am, can we have any zoom in and zoom out settings?
Yes, like how I'm doing now.
Yeah, but while we're zooming in, it is going very outside of the zooming.
Okay, so that is if I'm zooming out, then it goes a bit.
No. While zooming in,
Hmm.
I need more zoom, but it is going out of the frame.
You want to see the inside of your room, right?
If any material or if any wardrobe, I should be seeing, I should be zoom in.
Correct, because we are in the ground floor level. If you select the room level here, if I select room 1, you will be able to see your wardrobe much better.
Please zoom in the wardrobe. Or
Yes, I'm going to click on this wardrobe and I'm going to select zoom to selected object here. Now
Okay.
you will be using this wardrobe as a pivot point.
Okay.
It'll not go out of the frame either, at least not immediately.
Okay. Sure,
Yes,
thank you.
sure. Anything else? If you have any other questions about the facade, anything?
Madam, I want to say one thing.
Yes.
Advanced Happy Women's Day for you, madam.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your, for your sharing this class, sharing your knowledge to entire my team as well as other people.
Sure, sure. Yes, no problem at all. I'm afraid I think I've interacted with you like in previous webinar as well,
Yes,
right?
madam. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 Uh, I understand you work with Revit as well, right? Yes.
Yes. SketchUp and Revit, madam.
Yes, yes. All right. Yes, I'm glad that you enjoyed this session as well, and I hope that at least some of the things regarding exterior rendering, the exterior facades, etc., is a bit clearer now.
I hope even you or your other team will help you while we are doing some any doubts and all. I think so.
Sure. Yes. So,
Okay. Thank you, madam.
all right. Yes, these webinars are usually taken up by one person or the other. Usually it is on interiors, but today is so for the last 2 weeks, including this one, it has been on exterior as well. Yes. All right. So that would be it. I think if no one has any other doubts, that would be the end of this session. So whoever wants a recording of this, you can get in touch with your respective point of contact, your customer success rep, and they can actually share this recording with you as soon as it is ready. It'll take over a day, and then we can share this link with you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, madam. First of all, thanks a lot for. I mean, something new software. We are learning something we can achieve with this software.
All right. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.